Hi there, I'm Kim, taking you through some of the things people are talking about and the stuff they're sharing around the world on Newsfeed today. NASA announces plans to explore Saturn's biggest moon to find out what or who is there and whether humans could one day make it home. Twitter puts politicians in its sights as it targets hate speech, but is it enough? Now, does this needle you? Millions of knitters are censored. And lending a helping hand, or rather a lending paw, rehabilitation goes both ways in lockup. NASA has announced it's going further than ever before, sending a mission all the way to Saturn's largest moon, Titan. It is, of course, going to check out the chemistry of the planet for the sake of science, but the agency is also open to the possibility of alien life already being there. It will also evaluate whether we humans could one day live on that icy celestial body. This is NASA's take on what the endeavour will look like, what you're looking at now. It hopes to take off in 2026 and will take 8 years to get there. Still pretty exciting, though. Of course, NASA aren't the only ones pushing the boundaries. An international space race for the moon is already underway. Entrepreneurs want to take tourists to space, and getting man to Mars is becoming an ever more viable possibility. But all of this, of course, raises a lot of questions. So to talk through it all, we spoke to astrophysicist Erica Nesvold, who founded the Just Space Alliance, which focuses on the ethics of space exploration.
I think it really depends, our timeline really depends on willpower at this point. If the entire globe of humanity turned their attention towards moving into space, then within 20 or 30 years, I could certainly see us having humans on Mars, for example, and within 100 years having a thriving society on Mars. As for inevitability, I think that it's inevitable that one of two things will happen. Either we'll spread our civilization into space, or eventually humanity will go extinct on Earth. One of the big ones I see right now is the problem of radiation. A lot of the conditions on Earth, like our atmosphere, protect us from the radiation bombardment from outer space, and we lose that when we go out into deep space, when we go to the moon, and especially when we go somewhere like Mars. And that can have a huge damage on human health. Humans will be carrying all of the issues that we've had in the past forward. And the history of colonization on Earth has been a history that includes genocide and oppression and exploitation and the damage to the environment. And so as we move into space, we need to be thinking about things like property rights, who owns space, how we settle conflicts about territory and resources, what about labor rights issues, how do we handle labor and the economy in space without exploiting people who aren't as powerful as other people. Even things like reproductive rights and how we bear children in space will be big issues that we need to think about. Some people have referred to space as the Wild West. But again, the Wild West wasn't great for a lot of people that were living on the North American continent at the time. So we could just let it be first come, first serve, which I think would end up resulting in a lot of conflict. Or we could be really deliberate and careful and think about the issues that we're going to run into, talk to each other, and decide for ourselves how we want to apportion resources and territory in space before we get there.
For years, Twitter has been turning a blind eye when world leaders tweet things that violate its policies against things like harassment or hate speech. Now, the company basically took the approach that, hey, it's harmful, but, what politicians say is newsworthy enough to remain online. But now Twitter's taking action of a kind. It's not going to delete politicians' bad tweets like it does everyone else. Instead, it's going to hide the tweets behind a warning, letting people know that the tweet may contain abusive content, but if they want to read it, just click through and go right ahead. Well, earlier I spoke with David Patrick-Holocaust. He's a journalist for Politico Europe and the Daily Beast and author of War in 140 Characters. I asked him what he thinks of Twitter's middle-of-the-road solution.
Look, it's one of those things where they've tried to please everyone and it's sort of become a bit half a dozen of one and six of the other. I mean, they're not taking down the tweets. which, to be fair, if they're from the President of the United States, for example, is probably a good thing. Obviously, pretty much everything the President of the United States says is in the public interest, especially if it is offensive. So that they're not hiding them. But I suppose what it means is, that one or two people will say what the tweets are saying, and then less people will click, which means the algorithm doesn't push them up as much, which is why Trump seems to be annoyed. Well, I think that we hold politicians to a different standard than we hold the general public. So if you're talking about it in general, is it fair to hold politicians to a different standard than non-elected officials? I think the answer is yes. Yeah, because they are elected officials, they have a responsibility to behave in a certain manner. So that element is certainly fair. The issue is one of free speech. It could take the tweets down, but as I say, unless it's absolute incitement to kill or something that's grossly illegal, Donald Trump's offensive tweets are in the public interest because it's the President of the United States being offensive. And, we need to know about that as much as it does play into his hands as well. Look, the answer is yes and no. It's not just Trump, but it's about against the Trumpification of politics. So many other politicians who do have that $100,000 threshold that this policy is targeting have become like Trump in an effort to replicate his success. So I'd say it's not about Trump per se, although he's the leading figure, but it's about the Trumpification of politics in general. I'm not convinced about this policy. As I say with everything, we're still in the very early stages of social media. We're still groping around to try and find solutions to the problems that plague us. I'm not sure this is it, but at least they're starting to take some form of action.
Well, let's have a look now at some other things that caught our eye on social media this Friday. First up, who are you going to call to play the leads in yet another Ghostbusters movie? First off, who knew we actually needed one? It's only been a couple of years since the all-woman-led reboot. Well, forget the girls getting a sequel like Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd had with the original. This time, Paul Rudd has got the casting call. They haven't said yet who else will don the iconic grey ghost-busting suits this time round, but wouldn't it be nice if they gave all Y chromosomes the parts? This kitty has a newfound fame as the first amputee cat to walk again on all 4 prosthetic paws. Her name is Redhead and she hails from Siberia, where she lost her little feet to frostbite 4 years ago. She's gone through a lot of rehab to learn to walk again, and look at her, just nailing it. Billie Eilish is everywhere right now. She's only 17 years old, but she's selling out stadiums and molding an incredible pop career. She's also known for her pretty unique style, wearing really oversized clothes, and she just told Vogue why. Billie says it means no one can judge her on what her body looks like. The interview came out right as a photo of her in a tank top did the rounds, and of course she was right. People were judging left, right, and center. It's kind of sad. Now, when you think knitting, you probably don't think politics, but turns out knitting circles are an intensely political place. Stitching site Ravelry, basically the Facebook of knitting, has banned public support for the Trump administration on its platforms. It says backing Trump amounts to supporting white supremacy, and they want to make their knitting community a safe place for people of colour. Here's our resident knitting expert, Sarah.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's Brio Stitch.
Non-knitters might wonder who's needling who and who's telling what yarns. Let's break down one of the latest dust-ups involving the Trump administration. This time, it's the knitters who've taken a stab. Social media has brought together all kinds of knitters. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. And it turns out they're not all getting along. Take the latest announcement by Ravelry, a popular online knitting resource with more than 8 million users. The company recently posted it's banning Trump support. In a statement, Ravelry said, "We cannot provide a space that's inclusive of all and also allow for support of open white supremacy. Support of the Trump administration is undeniably support for white supremacy." They haven't offered examples, but a quick look at popular knitting and crochet forums makes it clear that these yarn wizards, who come in every color, age, gender, and faith, don't all see themselves fitting into their growing communities. And those who are marginalized in the real world often face the same treatment online. A February Vox article points out how Western knitters still stick to conservative knitting stereotypes. Popular Instagrammer Ocean by the Sea says in an article, "When I didn't show myself, people would assume that the picture was from a white person. That's when I knew it was really whitewashed." And moderation is another problem. Maintaining a safe space for their diverse members has been a serious challenge for these sites, with mods frequently reporting harassment and even death threats. A poster identifying as a Ravelry moderator tweeted that the emotional labor of diffusing angry and ugly situations where casual hate and intolerance is directed at queer, non-Christian, or minority people is fracking exhausting. With reports of hate crimes on the rise since Trump, online companies say they've been forced to take action. It's important to note that the ban covers Trump support, not Trump supporters. They're still welcome to take part, but must keep their political views to themselves. And while many aren't happy with the decision,
so you could post something and say, pray for our president, and you will be banned from Ravelry.
Ravelry's gotten a strong response from its members who say they just want to knit without the hate.
Let's go around the world now for some other stories you need to know. Here's one for the legal eagles. A woman from Alabama has been charged with manslaughter for the death of her unborn baby. The jury says Marche should be held responsible because she allegedly started the fight with the woman who shot her. Charges against the shooter have been dropped. A Catholic bishop in Colombia says his city of Buenaventura is plagued by demons. He says there's a wickedness in the city which is notorious for drug trafficking and gang violence. So Bishop Montoya is planning to use a helicopter to spray holy water over the entire city to exorcise the demons. He's going to borrow a chopper from the Navy for his holy mission. A Kiwi company known for its borderline advertising campaign says the selling of meat pizzas using fake meat was not misleading to customers. Hull Pizza launched the burger pizza last week, saying it was topped with a medium rare burger patty, but instead it used plant-based patties. The pizza chain says it hasn't broken any laws and is happy to have encouraged more people to be open-minded on the meat-free meat front. Cross-species rehabilitation may sound like an out-there idea, but in practice, it's man and his best friend helping each other out to heal. Dogs who would otherwise be put down are being teamed with down-and-out inmates. Here is Reagan.
Zach Scow said his 3 dogs saved his life. 10 years ago, he was battling drug and alcohol addiction. He had liver disease and was given 3 months to live. There was one thing that motivated him to get sober and healthy.
Turning around and seeing my dogs, how my dogs actually saw me, was a real pivotal moment for me. And kind of in that moment, I recognized that if I couldn't live for myself, I was going to try and live for them.
Now he's paying it forward by taking dogs who've had a tough time finding homes and allowing inmates to care for them. His Poor-Sensitive Change program is active in 5 California prisons. He says it's a form of rehabilitation for both the dogs and inmates.
More of our incarcerated brothers and sisters need to have access to this kind of healing. Really, the feeling is that dogs are medicine, and the medicine that they've been able to dose out in my life, we ought to try to harness that medicine and give it to as many people as possible. So that's really what the prison program was, just harnessing the medicine of the human-canine bond and unleashing it inside the prison system.
Young prisoners care for the strays for 3-month stints.
It's just like I feel like a stronger person. I don't know how to describe it. It just makes me feel like the dogs have shown me something and you guys have shown me something. Like, don't give up. All because you messed up a week or you fall or you're in trouble. Just don't give up. Keep on striving to be better.
Scow says its program saved 60 dogs from being euthanized last year. Many have gone on to work in the pet services industry, and none are back behind bars.
Well, that's it from the Newsfeed team this week. I'm off home to see my doggy. You can find us 24/7 on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you soon.